Back live with another edition of the Sunday recap here on BTO Media. Kevin Brunk, Mike Merlo coming to you every Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday. It will be one of the three every week. This week's for the division round, Mike, and this is filled with a lot. These four games gave us so much to talk about. At the least was the Ravens-Texans game where the Ravens just took care of their business. And then you go to that game on Saturday night where we will certainly talk about the performance of Purdy, the performance of the 49ers against the Packers in a game that maybe they shouldn't have won. And then you move to Sunday where we got two really chock-full games with content and stuff to speak on, with some coaching disaster at the end from both sides. We'll talk about each of our guys, your guy being Dan Campbell, my guy being Todd Bowles, and I'm saying our guys sarcastically, as both of them did an awful job to close out that game. Neither coach tried to win that game in the last 8 minutes. And then we also have last night's game, which is where we will start. Chiefs-Bills gave us another classic in their installment. Third time Allen and Mahomes have played against each other in the postseason. The first time was that blowout at Arrowhead, but the Bills weren't quite ready for that one. We knew that they were a year or two away. And then they followed it up with the unbelievable division round game that we saw, 3 years ago now, between the Bills and Chiefs, where the 13-second thing happened and overtime and all the rules got changed for Josh Allen. And after they changed all the rules, the Bills still have not beaten the Chiefs a few years later. Great game last night. Your takeaways?
Yeah, it was a great game. You know, I think, Kevin, and you, I think more so held out hope more than me because you thought the Chiefs were going to win yesterday. But even towards the regular season, I held out hope that the Chiefs were going to find something on offense. They were going to find it. And you know, the first game, the wild card round was cold. You can't take much away from that. And they were bad in the red zone. But you watch this game, which was, I mean, you can make the argument it was just as good as some of the other games they've played, which have been instant classics. And they found their offensive stride. It scored 27 points. You know, the Bills defensively played okay last night. Made some stands in the second half when they had to, but ultimately couldn't get the scores when they needed.
Mahomes last night didn't have a real eye-popping night, but 215, 2 touchdowns, got the job done. He's just unreal, man. They get to the postseason, and I think there's just a standard that's set there, and it's similar to New England. There were years with Brady where we looked at the New England team, and we just said, it doesn't really feel like it's there in the regular season entering the postseason, and Travis Kelce last night reminded me of those end-of-career year Gronkowski seasons where he wouldn't have a very good year, and it wouldn't be good year by his standards, and it wouldn't be incredibly productive. And then you get to the postseason, and Brady and Gronk are just connecting every time they're in the red zone, every time they're within the 40-yard line, and that's how it felt last night. Kelce showed up for the postseason, 5 for 75. He had both touchdowns. And Isaiah Pacheco runs in the playoffs, man. This guy can run in the playoffs. I don't know what it is, but he almost seems to go 70% the whole regular season. And then the postseason comes through, and he's as good as anybody.
Yeah, and it wasn't like he was bad throughout the regular season. He was a weapon for them. But one of the main reasons why I think their offense was able to hit their stride, see what we normally see from a Chiefs offense, was because they were able to add the running game. The receivers, we know about them. They're not the same. MVS stepped up last night. Rashee Rice was pretty good. And obviously you mentioned Kelce, who, I mean, hasn't looked great, you know, the second half of this season. Steps up last night, but the running game for the Kansas City Chiefs and for the Bills, which we'll get to in a minute, especially in that first half, it was important, and they needed it to get through these games, and it set up so much for these offenses.
I will say also, does any coordinator, I've said this for the last few years, and it's not a crazy take. I don't want to act like I'm inventing this. Any coordinator have their defense more prepared than Steve Spagnuolo every single January? I mean, they are ready to go every year. And Josh Allen, there was a point in that game where I thought, and I said Chiefs by 10 yesterday to you. I told you that yesterday morning. Yeah. I loved the Chiefs in this game. There was a point yesterday, I want to say late third quarter, where I thought Josh Allen was going to take this game and just run away with it. And then the Chiefs didn't give up another point in this one.
Well, the Chiefs stopped the run. I mean, James Cook was running all over them in the first half. He had 67 yards in the first half, and then he went backwards in the second half. He had negative yardage in the second half. So the Bills were trying to set things up. They were able to do so with the run. They ran some interesting screens. But one thing I want to get to, and I have to pull this up from Next Gen Stats that I saw last night, was and I was saving this. I didn't even text this to you. Josh Allen completed all 16 of his passes thrown behind the line of scrimmage. Anything past the line of scrimmage, he was 10 for 21 for 95 yards, and he only had 2 completions past the sticks. So
Wow.
I don't think that's Josh Allen. I think that's Joe Brady. I think that's probably their game plan. But we saw in the first half how efficient they were offensively. They were running the ball. They were doing a great job. And then I don't know what happened, and I don't know why they weren't more aggressive. Obviously, we saw the drop from Stephon Diggs. That was terrible. It was a perfectly placed ball from Josh Allen down the field. But you got to put a little bit of this on Josh Allen. He was outplayed by Patrick Mahomes last night.
He was once again, but Allen always plays really well in these games, and Mahomes just plays better. That's kind of how it's gone. But I gotta go to the bad for Buffalo, and there's a couple points, but Allen makes the throw of the year, and it goes right through Diggs' hands. I mean, we've been talking since November about how Diggs has been phased out, and he's been pissed about it. He's not happy with it. He's a guy that's been open, not quite during this season, but open in the past about his distaste for anywhere he plays, whether it was in Minnesota, whether it was in Buffalo. And Allen puts a ball right on his chest over the shoulder, 70 yards downfield, and it hits the ground. And that was the play that I think lost the game. Tyler Bass is going to get all the rippings, all the ridicule for missing. And the wide right thing, of course, fits the narrative for Buffalo. But Steph Diggs with a massive, massive drop.
They're a tortured franchise. I mean, they are an absolutely
They really are, man.
tortured franchise. I do feel bad for them because this is a legitimate team. And even go back to last season, if they had James Cook playing this well and they had any sort of running game, I think they beat the Bengals. I think they had the best overall roster in the sport. Maybe the Eagles had a little bit of a better roster last season, but especially going into the year, we all thought the Bills were the number 1 team in the league, and they were the number 1 seed in the AFC even through the DeMar Hamlin stuff. But they are a tortured franchise, and then you want to even talk about what happened with McDermott and that play with Hamlin. What a just boneheaded call. If that was called from the sideline and that was not a check because there was 10 men on the field, which was reported last night that it was the actual plan going into it. What a terrible move from McDermott and that staff.
And then that just brings you right into a McDermott conversation, right? I mean, I said last week, if the Bills were to lose to Pittsburgh, then becomes a Belichick Vrabel destination. All right, they won that game against Pittsburgh. They lost on a field goal. There's no mulligan for missing the field goal for the coaching staff. You can't say, oh, McDermott had a great game. They just missed the kick. You gave him the ball at the 35-yard line because you ran a snap to DeMar Hamlin, who's played maybe 5 or 6 snaps before this game this season. What are we doing? What is the plan?
What was it? Third? Was it 4th and 5? What was it? It was
4th and 5 or 6.
Like, just go for it with that. If you really want to go, just go for it with Allen. I know you're trying to add the element of surprise there, but just give the ball to your best player. Let him run. We forget about that. He did run the ball really well last night, but he has to do more throwing the football. What a boneheaded move, though. And then they get bailed out with the touchback play, the fumble out of the end zone, which I like, by the way. Am I in the minority in liking that rule?
I like it because there has to be some sort of risk reward for the player. You can't just be able to reach for the goal line, be able to extend every time, and if it gets punched out of bounds, oh well, no punishment. There has to be some sort of risk.
Yeah, 100%, because it's almost like, and I don't want to say it's easy because it's very difficult, but it's easier than having to get 2 feet in and hold possession where you could just dive for the end zone, get the ball across the line or hit the pylon. So if you do lose the ball, there's just so many rules benefiting the offense. They're 100%. This should be
God forbid the defense gets one rule, man. Oh yeah. My God. You can't touch the quarterback anymore. You can't hit a receiver anymore. You can't if the receiver initiates contact in the field of play before the ball's thrown, you can't touch back. I mean, it's just like it's everything's for the offense. Let's have one for the defense here. And it's coaching because Bill Belichick, and this is not to say Andy Reid is not a good coach. This is not an Andy Reid knock. But Bill Belichick had a rule. Don't reach for the goal line. Unless it's 4th down and goal to go and you need the goal line, don't reach for it. That was a rule with the playmakers on the offense. So Preach it, man. You got to preach it. And McCole Hardman stinks.
Yeah,
What the
he
hell did the
does.
Jets see giving this guy $7 million for the year?
Yeah, that's crazy. At least they had, MVS step up a little bit last night. The first time I ever saw this rule, it was Jets Patriots. I
Oh, and
want to
that
say,
call was BS too, man.
who
Don't get
was
me
it?
started there.
Who?
Austin Safari and
Yes.
Jenkins.
Yes.
That
Okay.
call sucked.
Yeah, I remember. That's the first time I ever remember this call happening, and that was the year the Jets they went 10-6, right?
No, it was the year after with Josh McCown. But
Oh,
they were,
right.
but in that game they were 4-3 or 3-2, and it was a huge surprise because
Yeah,
they were the 0-16 team before the year.
yeah, they were in that game against the Patriots. I remember that.
Yeah.
But I also want to bring this up, okay? Because I mentioned that stat about you know Allen not being able to throw the ball downfield much last night.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about the offense for the Chiefs putting it together to go along with the way this defense has played now, and they stepped up big time last night. I don't see how they lose to Baltimore. I know how great Baltimore is, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. But with the way the defense is playing, mixed with now Mahomes and Kelsey finding it a little bit, defense is great. Great. And you mentioned Spags. Their defense is great.
So here was my thoughts after the game last night. I had somebody text me that I wasn't able to watch the game fully. You know that I was working last night, so I was kind of in and out watching the game. I saw a majority of plays, but I got to a point last night where I said, hey, you know what? The Chiefs won, but I think it's the Ravens' year in the AFC. I really do. Because what will the Ravens do that the Bills maybe didn't? And I didn't have the full stats yet. I said Lamar and the Ravens going to keep the Chiefs' offense off the field, and then the defense will get enough stops. The Bills had the ball for almost 40 minutes last night. So that's just, I mean, it's when Mahomes gets the ball and he needs to move it, they do. And it makes next week's game fascinating. I still think I lean Baltimore because I think the defense is significantly better than Buffalo's.
Yeah.
I think the play calling on both sides is significantly better than Buffalo's, but it's going to be a close game, man. The Chiefs have showed now that they're able to weather the storm through now 2 weeks of the postseason against two teams that are good football teams that could have won a game. And whatever you want to say about Miami, man, that's a good team. That's a good first round team.
Yeah.
And I think that it's going to be Baltimore, but you're not crazy for saying that, man. They showed up last night.
I wonder what the time of possession was in the second half because they did make some stops. They got off the field, that defense. Where in the first half, I mean, Buffalo just went, and both of them went up and down the field. Kansas City just went up and down the field faster than Buffalo did. Buffalo had longer drives. That first drive of the second half, Buffalo had, they went, I think, what was it, 17 plays? I'm pretty sure it was that drive, 17 plays from there. So, they're impressive, to just be able to take the ball and go down the field that fast, but you're right. They're going to have to, I think, keep that offense off the field and give their defense some rest in this game.
Yeah, it's next week's games. I love both of them. We'll talk about both of them later on.
Yeah.
But this is going to be a great championship weekend. The Mahomes versus Lamar thing is so interesting because everyone always talks about, and I'm starting to hate the comparisons. I was one of the first people to start making them way back when Allen and Mahomes were starting to play, but there's the Manning, Brady, Roethlisberger trio and then it's like the jokes, who's Rivers,
Yeah.
And Lamar has not been in that conversation, but he's been close to the best regular season quarterback of all of them. So he's about to win his second MVP.
Yes, but they haven't been in the AFC Championship game.
Exactly.
They haven't had these
very
classic playoff matchups.
Very, very fair. And Lamar now gets an opportunity to insert himself into that conversation. Yeah. And if Lamar wins this game next week, whether they win 3-0, because it didn't matter how Brady won. How many times did Brady win the AFC Championship? It didn't matter how he got there, So if they win 3-0 next week, Lamar won a game. He did enough to win.
Yeah.
And they move on. So he inserts himself into that conversation. And then I think, based on resume, he has to jump Burrow and Allen in that AFC tree of quarterbacks. But it's just interesting because he gets a chance now. He gets an opportunity that he hasn't had yet.
See, Allen is just like we've seen him play very well in the postseason. We've seen him get to an AFC championship game. We've seen these classic matchups versus the Chiefs. I'm not there yet. You got to win a little bit more in the playoffs. If
with
you're
Allen.
Lamar. If you're Lamar.
Well, no, but Allen hasn't won either, though.
Yeah, but he's won more games. Think about the games that Lamar has won and lost. They had a couple of buys where they just got sent to the second round and they lose. So he's done more, like not overall winning where you've gotten to a Super Bowl, but literally more wins. He has more wins.
Going into the weekend, the Ravens in 4 playoff games with Lamar Jackson were 1-3, averaging 13 points per game. So the postseason hasn't been kind to him at all. What was their one win before? Was it
Tennessee
game?
In Tennessee.
That was his first playoff game.
Yeah, no,
it wasn't because he played.
The first one was when they were the 1 seed.
Flacco, yeah.
They were the 1 seed. No, it was his MVP year. They were the 1 seed.
Year.
They had the game at home, and Tennessee went and upset them.
Yep. Oh, man. So
Not
you got the
good for
Chiefs
Lamar.
next week.
Yeah, I got the Chiefs. I think they're going to win. You're going to see this choke job.
Do you think in 10
Ravens
years,
again.
this is a side thought from the games. Do you think in 10 years we're going to look back at this season? Because people do this with Steve Nash. I know you're not like a huge basketball historian, but Steve Nash won an MVP and he was like 29th in scoring, and he was kind of just the best player. I think it was 2004, and I think we might look back at Lamar's season this year in 10, 15 years, and maybe people who were too young to watch it, like a 4 or 5-year-old now, and say, why didn't Josh Allen win? When you look back at the stats.
Yeah, there's a chance we might do that. It wouldn't shock me. I think Lamar, though, I don't know. I think Lamar, you add the rushing stats, you add everything. I think the turnovers, where they don't hurt me for Josh Allen, they hurt other people. So I think people say, oh, well, he turned the ball over too much.
Yeah, not me. You know how we both feel about Lamar. All right, let's get into this game yesterday. This is what I've been looking forward to. Because you know how I feel about coaching. You know I love the coaching scene in the NFL, and I love Dan Campbell, and I've been really banging the table for Dan Campbell this year, and more so his coaching staff, which I credit to him. I love staff builders. I told you yesterday my favorite coach in the league is Harbaugh because the guy's a damn good staff builder. Dan Campbell yesterday, we'll start with him instead of the moron on the opposite side. He almost lost him this game yesterday, man. They did not coach this game well in the last 4 or 5 minutes.
He is too aggressive at times. I felt as though he was too aggressive in that Dallas game where technically he had nothing to lose even if he lost the game. But there are just times where he is too aggressive and it could possibly cost you a game. And if Baker goes down the field when he gets the ball back because, the Lions decided to stop running the ball. Meanwhile, I would have trusted them to pick up the yardage and get the first down and end the game running the ball just as much as them throwing the ball because they're a great run team. He almost cost him the game. If Baker went down the field, tied that game, they go to overtime and lose. That's on Campbell for not making sure Ben Johnson is running the football in that scenario. I think that's a head coach call, correct? He's telling Johnson, we're throwing the ball. Let's go get this first down and win it.
It is because people always ask me, and it's just been a conversation since it happened, about the 28-3 Super Bowl. And Kyle Shanahan blew it by throwing the ball. No, Dan Quinn, get on the headset, grow a pair, be a head coach, and say, hey, we're running the ball. We got a Pro Bowl running back. In both cases, they have Pro Bowl caliber running backs, whether it be Gibbs and Montgomery, whether it be Devontae Freeman in 15. But get on the headset, be a head coach, and tell football. I don't care if you're a defensive guy, a special teams guy, or an offensive guy. Football. If you and me know that they should be running that ball, Dan Campbell and Dan Quinn know they should be running that ball. So how about we hand it off, get on the headset, tell your coordinator, who is really great in both cases, just phenomenal coordinator. Tell them that, and let's just run it, easy win. Didn't happen yesterday. Campbell almost blew this one.
Yeah. Again, he's done it, but he's done it too many times, though, where you just see he's way too aggressive. And, you had mentioned it to me a couple of days ago where you said, because you're a Campbell guy, you're a known Dan Campbell guy. And I have said that I'm not so much of a Dan Campbell guy. I think he's too aggressive. And you mentioned he's going to lose his coordinators. That might be difficult for him. I think when he loses these two coordinators, which Johnson's obviously he's gone after this year, and Glenn might even go after this year too. He loses both those guys. I think Dan Campbell's going to be in trouble unless he's able to find replacements that are just as good, because his coordinators help him big time. And I think they're the reason why this team is going.
And I'll say this in regards to Aaron Glenn. Glenn is very good, but replaceable. Because of the way offensive coaches get hired now, Ben Johnson is not.
Yeah.
So unless you have somebody, we saw it with Dable to Ken Dorsey. We saw it with a million other people that I'm just not going to. We saw it in Atlanta. I just talked about Atlanta when Shanahan left.
Yeah.
That all went downhill right after. Philadelphia this year with both guys. But unless you have somebody right under him that's ready to go and you feel great, then you're kind of just toast. I mean, the best example of coordinator replacement is from within is San Francisco. Just Shanahan's staff is unbelievable.
He always has somebody to just replace the next guy.
So I mean, like the Jets hire Saleh, D'Amico Ryans comes up. The D'Amico Ryans gets up, then he finally goes external with Steve Wilkes, what's the guy he's worked with before.
Wilkes will get a job soon. They'll have the replacement for him ready to go.
I don't know if Campbell has what it takes to do that. I almost, and I hate to say it because I really, really, really do love Dan Campbell because I love the culture he's built. I almost think that he lucked into Ben Johnson a little bit.
Yeah.
And because he hired Anthony Lynn to start, that was a mess. Anthony Lynn's a freaking disaster, man. That was such a mess. And then he just ended up having the best coordinator in the league after that. I think he lucked into that one big.
And then he has him turned
after.
And then he has him turn down jobs last year, and he's going on the podium talking about how important it is that he didn't take any jobs last year and came back this year, which I guess is true. He's just made himself more money. He's more of an attractive option for teams that are looking for head coaches this year. But yeah, listen, I've been in a football locker room at a very lower level, right? Clearly,
yeah, the lowest level. If you were playing,
right.
It was the lowest possible level.
Right. So I understand what it's like to not like a coach and really like a coach and want to do anything for that coach. And it seems as though those guys love Dan Campbell and would do anything for him. But there is, strategy involved and obviously, schematics and being too aggressive. And I think that's where Dan Campbell is going to ultimately fail here when he loses Johnson.
And there's also that part of having a coach you really like that they also have to be good. Their speech and their mannerisms and everything they do to make you believe in them has to be backed up by the product you put on the field, and ultimately that's winning. So if Dan Campbell can't put together a game plan without Ben Johnson, that because I know Campbell's a tight ends coach, but he's really not an offensive coach or a defensive coach, or he truly is the CEO head coach.
Yeah, I thought
so. All right, so Merlot's gone. I was waiting for some affirmation there. Gabe gave that to me, so I will continue until Merlot rejoins. Gabe, question: how much the NFL is an offensive head coach-minded league do you guys feel about this cycle being full of defensive-minded head coach options? It's a good question. I think that, and I think you would agree that if a coach can coach, he can coach. I think the offensive thing is a little bit overrated. Mike returning now, but I still feel the grain of the league right now is to go offensive. And if you can find that offensive coach, you have to, because the defensive coaches are running out of offensive coordinator options because there's 40, 50 guys that can call defense. There's 10, 15 guys that can call offense, and 9 of them are head coaches. Maybe 12 of them are head coaches. So there's not that hot young coordinator that you can just hire to be your coach. They're getting hired to do head coaching jobs. And I think that's a fault we saw from Sean McDermott. He fell victim to this because he had no coordinator. He was able to get Brian Dable out of Alabama, which was a guy trying to make a jump to the pros. That's really the only case where that happens. There's nobody trying to do that this year, but you never know. It always could pop up. and become a scenario that happens. But Sean McDermott has ultimately failed without Brian Daboll. They have not looked nearly as good. This year, they showed flashes with Joe Brady of getting back to the Daboll success on offense. They lose by 3 in a playoff game. But I think it's just important to make sure that you have a guy that can call plays if need be. He doesn't have to call plays. Brian Daboll doesn't. That's an example of a coach that doesn't. But you need a coach that can at least coach offense, because that's where the league has gone. That's what's important right now to teams developing the quarterback. And the defensive coaches just don't have the track record. Now, I will say, if you have a quarterback you're confident in, say Nick Sirianni was fired. You like Jalen Hurts already. Say Mike McCarthy was fired. You like Dak Prescott already. Mike Vrabel's a guy that I would hire because he's got a good track record of offensive coordinators. He's had multiple get hired, and he is going to coach up your defense so that your offense is then in a position where they have to score 10, 13 points, and they can actually win some games. Imagine if, Baltimore had, or not Baltimore, because they do have a top defense, but like Cleveland this year. Cleveland had just a revolving door of really bad quarterbacks, and they ended up having a very successful season because they were able to have defense. Obviously, Kevin Stefanski's an offensive guy, but they have a great coordinator in Schwartz. And then you have the opposite side of that, which is the Jets, which is the Patriots. They have not been able to develop a quarterback. The Jets without Aaron Rodgers this year, it was obviously a mess, but those teams allow 10, 13 points and lose in these games. So it's an offensive time for coaches. That's where I would just say I'd go offensive right now with the best offensive guy available. But ultimately, you have to be a leader. At the end of the day, if you can't lead the group, and it's a group of men, adults, 21 to 40, who are making more money than you and are more important to you than the organization in most cases, you have to be able to lead that group, and that's not an easy group to lead. You can't underestimate it. So just hiring a guy because he holds the play sheet during the games is not the way to go, but with all the defensive coaches, you got to at least try out one or two. Vrabel and Belichick have shown that they can do it, but guys like Lou Anarumo, Aaron Glenn, that have never coached before, Wink Martindale, I just don't think there's any hope for them as a head coach because it hasn't happened yet, and it's just a time in the league where everyone wants offense because the defensive coaches are failing. Who's left? Who are the final four left? Harbaugh is more of that CEO type, but he can coach. He's an offensive guy, comes from an offensive family, but he can coach all three phases. Andy Reid, offensive guy. He's there every single year. Dan Campbell, once again, he's that CEO type, but he has an offensive background, tight end, and a tight ends coach. And then you go to San Fran with Shanahan, who's the genius play caller, quote unquote. And those are the guys that teams are looking at and saying, we need one of them. Because even if you go to the last round, I mean, D'Amico Ryans, defensive coach, and then McDermott, defensive coach, and who was on the other side was Todd Bowles, defensive coach, Matt LaFleur, offensive coach. So you just watched a surplus of defensive coaches lose because in a lot of cases their team couldn't pace and score points, and they don't have the elite quarterback. I have no idea if Mike's returning. I know that no one really wants to see him anyways, but I would like to. I'm one of the few people that like to. So let's see what's going on with Mike. Shoot him a text. See if I do this. Will he be in? Nope, he's not there. Okay, we also have never talked about the Steve Nash MVP situation where it was possible robbery. He almost had to go to the lengths of maybe it was racism that the guy won. You look back at some of those stats, Shaq, Kobe, LeBron, just all way better than Steve Nash in those years. Here he is, Return of the King.
I was back, and then you put me on the screen, and I guess you just couldn't hear me.
No, I couldn't. Yeah, I couldn't hear you or see you.
That's weird. That's really weird. I loved your offensive defensive coach.
So you were just sitting down there. You were just sitting in the lobby.
I was there. I'm like, when's he going? When's he gonna put me in? Put me in, coach.
No, it was just a white screen. All right. Well, anyways, let's continue our conversation here. Now that I've exercised the demons of offensive, defensive head coach and Steve
Wait, can I
Nash,
ask you a
the
question?
MVP. Yeah.
Let me ask you this question because we're about to get into it, and I genuinely don't know if he was axed or not. Did any reporter ask Todd Bowles what the hell he was doing?
I
Why he
haven't
didn't call
seen
a
it.
timeout or no?
I haven't seen it. So let's move into that because Todd Bowles just such a blunder, man. You're down. What was the final score of this game? It was a touchdown difference, right?
It was
I also have to
31-23.
say, why are we going for 2 at that touchdown before?
That's the analytical move.
But
When you're down 2
I get
touchdowns.
that it's we're going to get one of the 2, right? You might not. You really might not get one of the 2. So let's get the extra point here. Let's make it a 7-point game because now your back's going to be against the wall at when you're down by 2 with no time left if you did score. But it didn't matter because they didn't get there. Baker made a terrible read up the seam.
I've seen Matt
And
LaFleur do it so many times and win games because of it.
so I've also seen Matt LaFleur suck in the playoffs.
Yeah, that
So
too. But I've seen him do it in the regular season and win games.
LaFleur was good this weekend though, so I take it back. But you get to a point where you played this entire season to try and win the Super Bowl. Why wouldn't you call a timeout with a minute and a half left to get the ball back with maybe 20 seconds? Why not? You never know what would happen. Crazier things have happened.
That's not my problem. I mean, essentially it would have been the same time if you added up. When they take the knee and it's 4th and 12 with 37 seconds left, why did he not call the timeout there?
Because he's a moron. He's an awful head coach. I've had to hear from people all season long. Todd Bowles, good coach now. No, Todd Bowles, not good coach. Worst division in the league, filled with 3 head coaches that were somehow worse than he was. Dennis Allen was awful. Arthur Smith got fired. Frank Reich got fired. No quarterbacks in that division at all. Derek Carr was an absolute mess. Desmond Ridder was the worst quarterback we've ever watched. Bryce Young was just had a horrendous rookie season, whether his fault or not. Horrendous rookie season. Their defense was one of the worst in the league. And Todd Bowles feasted on that division with the only veteran, competent quarterback because Derek Carr is so washed up that Mayfield was the guy that was able to capitalize. And I tell you, a lot of teams, I don't think there was a team in the postseason, including the Steelers, that would have lost to the Eagles in the first round. They were so unprepared, so not motivated for that game. I don't think there's a single team that would have lost to them. So congrats to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on winning 9 games. He won 8 games last year with Tom Brady, this guy. He won 8 games in that division with Tom Brady last year, and he led the league in passing. All right? I mean, Todd Bowles is awful. This was fireable. I was
about to say that's a fireable offense.
That is such a fireable move, but I wouldn't just because of where you were expected to be in the beginning of the year. And yes, you did end up winning a playoff game, but fireable offense from Todd Bowles in this game, not calling a timeout.
Yeah, and that game was not really good up until about the time the scoring started around the third quarter. I mean, just sloppy play offensively. It wasn't great. I think it wasn't the defenses playing good. I think it was more just the offenses not being able to find it. You had a couple of bad turnovers, one really almost bad turnover in the end zone by Jared Goff, that dropped interception. Yes. So it just wasn't like a well-played game until the offenses really started getting it going, and then you saw what the Lions can do. They were too much. It was always going to be too much for this Bucs defense, and, ultimately it just wasn't going to be enough, Baker Mayfield and that offense to be able to keep up with that offense. But I kind of want to just kind of tease this right now, and we're going to talk about them. I think the 49ers are going to blow this Lions team out. I mean, blow them out.
It's a tough one for me. This one's tough.
You don't say it.
We'll move to the 49ers and kind of talk about their game and next week's game and everything in the mix, but I did not like what I saw from San Fran on Saturday night.
No, you didn't, but 8 days of rest now. You think that Kyle Shanahan's going to let that team have another, kind of blunder of a game? I don't think there's any way that happens. I think they're going to be totally prepared for this one. They're going to make Brock Purdy's life even easier, and they'll actually have time. If Debo's not going to play, they'll have time to prepare for life without Debo in this game.
I think
That's a great take by Gabe. I couldn't have been more wrong this entire postseason, and this entire NFL year. So it's a good take by Gabe.
I actually went 4-0 this weekend. That's impressive stuff. 4-0 in a division round weekend.
Yeah.
I got a little
greedy
sending you the scores. I was 2 for 2 on Saturday with those. That was Ravens better than 10 points, 49ers less than 10 points. So I was good on that. But then I sent you the scores again yesterday, and I just had to flip them. But I went 4 for 4 on games. That was impressive by me. And you went 0 for. So what are you so far this playoff? 0 for 12 this postseason?
Nah, well, I'm pretty close to that. I actually nailed the first 2 games, even though my Instagram post doesn't reflect that. I basically did that for clicks to try and piss off Packer fans, but I really thought the Packers were going to keep it close. And they did.
The terrible clickbait media, Mike Merlo. So yeah, San Fran, Detroit. I will say this about Detroit. I think they're a much better team than people give them credit for. I think as far as a roster goes, you're going to call me crazy. As far as a roster goes, I've thought, and you know this because I'm a Brad Holmes guy. You know, I'm not just making this up right now. I thought they have the second best roster in the league behind the Ravens. The 49ers have the real star power over everybody, but I think Lions from top to bottom, as far as depth goes and defense, has a really underrated roster that is very complete. However, it doesn't mean I take them over the 49ers as a team because the 49ers star power is just unbelievable. You have the best left tackle, a superstar player at left tackle. When you have a real game changer at left tackle, I consider them the best player in their offense. And then you have Debo, Ayuk. I don't have to go through all the Kittle, McCaffrey. Everybody knows. But I think this is going to be a really close game. And I think this is the type of atmosphere and situation where Dan Campbell's aggressiveness and the team's aggressive tendencies will actually benefit them because they're going to be playing for touchdowns all day. They're not going to be settling for 3. They're not going to be punting, trying to play a field position game. Dan Campbell knows there's one way to beat the 49ers, and this is going to sound so dumb. There's one way to beat them, and it's to score more points. Obviously, that's how you beat a team. That's how you win a sports game. But you have to score all day, and you have to do it more times than the 49ers. There's no stop. I look at score more points and stop them from scoring. Those are my 2 metrics of how you can go about a game, and both of them are so dumb because you're trying to do both in every game. But it's just one of my weird things, and I think you just have to go out and you have to get into a shootout with this team. You have to try and you have to stay aggressive all day, and I think they're going to. And I think they're going to make it close, but I still like San Fran in a very close game.
You're very. I'm easily convinced, especially the way I've been picking these games. So you're like you almost got me there, but I just don't trust this Detroit defense. And they're just not very good. I think you can run on this team. You can basically do whatever you want on this team. So you say get into a shootout, and you can. I mean, the Lions can play anybody in a shootout. They have such a great offense. They can do whatever they want offensively. It's just I don't trust the back end of that defense. I don't trust much with the Lions defense. They got to blitz to get pressure. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson has come on the last few weeks, but for the most part, you got to blitz the crap out of the Niners to get pressure on them. They're going to be in vulnerable positions.
Yeah, but you know what they do well, and no one really talks too much about it. Yesterday, they had some moments where they weren't doing it well. Is they stop the run. The Lions can stop the run really well, and Aaron Glenn game plans to stop everything up the middle. White had a good start yesterday, but he only ends up with 55 yards. I think that the Bucs might have abandoned the run a little bit too, but
when they wanted to run, they could run yesterday.
Yeah, if they wanted to, they could have, and they abandoned it. I thought, and they had 2 running backs, Edmonds and White, who both in small samples looked really good yesterday, and the offensive line was playing great for the Bucs. But I don't know, man. I think this Lions team just has a tendency to stay in close games. I think they're able to do that. They have big play ability on offense where a 28-14 game at the end of the third could turn into 28-21 real quick with the Lions. So I just like their ability to come up and make some plays in big moments. I absolutely don't think they're going to win this game unless it rains, because Brock Purdy cannot throw in the rain. But
yeah, Brock, we're Brock guys. I mean, at least I thought you were a Brock guy. I'm a Brock Purdy guy. Bad for the agenda on Saturday night. Other than a couple of really nice throws, and then obviously the drive to go down the field and score. Brock was terrible, missing guys. I mean, I don't think they were on the same page, but the weather was a factor. But he was missing guys wide open. Just don't really know where he's throwing the football. Kind of looked rattled. And again, that's not a great Packer defense. You're not playing, the Chiefs defense. You're not playing the Ravens defense. You're playing the Packers, who are banged up and, older on that side of the ball. Not a impressive performance from our guy, Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I truly just believe he can't throw in weather. He can't play in weather, but he doesn't really have to worry about it. Looks like they're going to have a nice weekend, and he'll be indoors for the Super Bowl if they win. But I want to just go to whether or not I'm a Brock Purdy guy, just to put it out there how I feel about him. I think Purdy's a very good quarterback. I think it's just a terrible, lazy narrative, the system quarterback thing, because most systems that are successful because the quarterback can run them. I mean, there's not just an offense that calls Madden plays. Every offense has a system. So whether or not the quarterback can run it really makes or breaks the system. Trey Lance didn't work out in San Fran. Garoppolo didn't work out long-term in San Fran. We saw guys, Shanahan had multiple years of 3 wins. So if anyone could play in it, that wouldn't be the case. But Purdy can. He's smart enough to do it. He makes a lot of the throws. He makes a lot of tough throws, and he's got good pocket presence. I like Purdy a lot. I think when you get to this point in the year, and he gets Jared Goff this week, so it's not an intimidating guy on the other side. But I think when you get to the point in the season when, if he was in the AFC, swap them and either of the AFC teams, and you're either staring at one of the greatest of all time in Mahomes and a guy that's just dominated the league for the last 6 or 7 years, or you're looking at the MVP of the league, you can see that, okay, if the second the thought gets into your head that you start saying, I don't know what I'm saying right now, I'm speaking like gibberish. The second you think for one moment that I have to make every throw because that guy's the other quarterback, you lose and you're done. So for Purdy, I think that can sometimes creep in. Now, life has moved pretty fast for Brock Purdy the last 2 years.
Yeah.
The guy was the last pick. You didn't know if he was going to get drafted. And now he is the face of one of the most storied franchises with quarterback-rich history in San Francisco, and they're in the NFC Championship game every year, and he almost won the MVP, and I think he sometimes might have to just take a step back and say, what the hell is going on with my life? This does not make sense.
100%. And you bring up, looking on the other side, Jordan Love's the better player. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Yes.
Jordan Love. And, I think I asked you that question like 2 months ago. Who would you rather? And I was still on the Brock Purdy train. Now I think it's easily Jordan Love with the way he's played. Things change. Look at the way Love has finished the season and played in the postseason outside of that fourth quarter, which was just brutal. But Jordan Love is fantastic. So Brock Purdy was definitely the lesser of the 2 quarterbacks in that game. And now I forgot what I was going to say. So I'm just going to kick it back to you because it was something about the 2 quarterbacks.
Wonderful. Well, I will say this about next week's game. Do you want to talk first, before I move into next week's game completely, do you want to talk at all about the Ravens-Texans game? To me, this was just a better team, got a young team that really shouldn't have been there this year, but had a great season and are way ahead of schedule. Better team got them. Similar to the Giants and Eagles last year, nobody saw that game coming or that team coming and having success winning a playoff game. They did, and they just met the best team in the conference and got killed on the road.
Well, hopefully they don't have the same trajectory as the Giants, where, they go to the playoffs, they're in the divisional round, they get killed, and they win 6 games the next year. They won't. They got to. The only thing I'll say is they got to get this kid wide receiver number 1. Whether they call the Raiders, whether they call Mike Evans, whether they bring in T. Higgins, they got to get Stroud number 1. That's all I'll say.
All right. So for me, next weekend is the Shanahan career culmination. This is a game
that's what I wanted to say.
Won.
Okay.
This is a game. Thank God you didn't, because I'm glad I did. This is a
this
game
is what
that
I was going to ask you.
If Shanahan loses this game, I have no idea what to think of him. I know he's a great coach. I know he's a great play caller. But you're at a point now where you will never have a better team and a better chance to win than this. And he hasn't done it yet. He's come up short at every possible chance to win a Super Bowl. Multiple NFC championships, his teams have come up short. And in a lot of them, you said, all right, the other team's better. They have a great quarterback. They had the momentum. 28-3. I've already talked about it once today, but the 28-3 game, Shanahan had the play sheet. He blew that game. I ultimately blame Dan Quinn, but Shanahan was the one calling those pass plays. So at every possible stop in his quest for a ring, Shanahan has lost. I'm a Shanahan guy. I think everyone's a Shanahan person, but this is it right here. And if you lose this game, you look a lot differently to the national media and the national fan base and your own fan base than you did today, because you have to win this game against Detroit at home this weekend. And honestly, you have to win the Super Bowl. Kyle Shanahan has to leave this season a champion, or I'm going to start to get concerned about his Super Bowl big game ability. He almost starts to feel like a Marty Schottenheimer to me if he loses this game.
So what I was going to say was I'm sitting in the tap room, okay, as, the game is unfolding. The Packer 49er game is unfolding. And my buddy, who's an Eagles fan, looks at me and he's, listen, his coach is taking some heat. We saw what Sirianni's done the past couple of seasons and, he's on the hot seat essentially. And he asks me, he goes, well, when is Kyle Shanahan going to go on the hot seat? Like, if he loses this game, when are we starting to talk about whether or not Shanahan should lose his job? We talk about McCarthy. We talk about Sirianni, all these guys that have had this success in the regular season. When's it Shanahan's turn? And so I ask you, if they lost that game, do you believe that he would have been on the hot seat where people would have been discussing maybe he's got to, we got to consider a change there?
No, because if he lost that game, it would have been directly pinned on Brock Purdy's shoulders, to where John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan could do one of two things. They could play the "we have to develop him further" card, he wasn't ready, or they could do the "we're going to go out and get a top quarterback, and maybe we trade up in the draft 25 spots to get one. Maybe we bring in a guy like Russell Wilson to compete with Purdy." They have options there to get out of it. And I just had this whole conversation about offensive play callers. The difference between Sirianni and Shanahan is Sirianni doesn't call the plays, and I don't know if he's good at calling any plays because he's never done it before. But Kyle Shanahan is probably the best play caller in the NFL. So you're not getting rid of that guy, because he's going to get picked up and made the highest paid coach in the league by a team that has sucked forever and can't develop quarter. Like the Bears. You don't think the Bears with the first pick would just cut Eberflus's head off and give this guy as much money as he wanted the second they had? He's done. Eberflus would be done. They'd bury him right away, and Shanahan would be the coach within 24 hours with the first pick.
The Bears. No, the logical decision would be that, but I don't think the Bears would do it.
The Bears, exactly. The Bears wouldn't do it. The Jets would keep Saleh, and all those teams that are just stuck in terrible purgatory forever would never get better, and that's how it goes. But then, Washington, new owner looking for a guy. Shanahan would go in a second.
100%. But you say, he has to win this championship. He has to get this Super Bowl. He has to win this championship. Because I'm with you. Like, he's unfireable. Whenever he wants to go, he can go. I'm not letting him go. So I don't believe he has to win the Super. Like, I think he has to win this game. I think it would really just, you have to win this game. But if he loses the Super Bowl, I think it's more of a legacy thing. I think that's where you're coming from. You're looking at him from a legacy standpoint. You're not looking at him from a job security standpoint, because he loses the Super Bowl. Okay, you lose to the Ravens. All right. But with the Chiefs, I don't, his job isn't like in jeopardy there. But I think if he loses this game, you're going to hear some chatter. But I would never personally, I would never fire him. Never.
No, I wouldn't either. And I don't know if you'll even hear, he's like a golden boy kind of coach in the league. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I feel like everybody really loves to praise Kyle Shanahan, and he should be. He's terrific, and he's innovative, and he's He develops players like nobody else. But I just think that there's a couple tiers of coaches. There's the guys that can't even get you there, and you're lucky to get to the playoffs with them. And that's most coaches. That's the reality for people that are head coaches. Most guys can't get you there. And then there's the guys that can get you there, but there's a ceiling. Sean McDermott might be one of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the Shanahan group that can win a Super Bowl. Whether he wins it or not, he can. I don't think anyone's denying that. He can have a team that wins one. No one will be surprised. And there's just a handful of those guys. And then there's the legacy guys. Andy Reid, Bill Belichick. If you want to say Mike Tomlin, you can. If you want to say John Harbaugh, I'm just throwing out guys with rings right now that are active. But Belichick and Andy Reid are those two real legacy guys in the league right now. Pete Carroll's gone, but he might not have been one anyways. Shanahan wants to be there. And his dad's one of those guys. So Shanahan wants to be there. And right now he's in that. He can get you there. Can he win you one in the all-time picture? Because Marty Schottenheimer is not highly regarded by the slightly diehard fan in the history of the NFL because he never won a championship. But he was a great coach and he was a great offensive mind. And he changed so much of the league. And everyone that worked or played for him praises him. But Shanahan needs this one. He really needs this one.
Yeah. And I think he's going to get it. I will go on the record. They were my Super Bowl pick. I think he gets there.
I think he's going to get it.
I think he gets it done.
It's going to be a battle. It's tough. It's tough last two games. Toughest ones to win are these, but I think he gets there.
Last week you said the divisional round's the best, football weekend, and I understand you get the Saturday and Sunday. I think this is the best day of the year for football. Like, no matter what, this is the best day of the year, this Sunday.
I like the division round because I think the division round only, and I'm not going to argue with you, both are great. It just gives us more of a chance at really great games. I think one of the best playoff games of the best non-Super Bowl playoff games. I don't consider the Super Bowl a football Sunday either. Just saying, I think this is the last week of football. I mean, once because you get the week off, and then it's like the biggest show ever now is the Super Bowl. But once I think that one of the best games of the last few years, the Bills-Chiefs games, both happened in the division round. I'm trying to think of the real memorable games. The Minnesota Miracle was division round.
That Bengals Chiefs game. No, that was divisional. The Bengals Bills Bengals Chiefs AFC Championship game. That was a good one.
That was a good one. Yep. So I think that it's definitely these 2 weekends. Wild card weekend kind of stinks. A lot of blowouts on wild card weekend. But
it does.
In a year like this one, I could see if anyone's going to blow anyone out in the AFC, it's going to be the Ravens. I don't think it'll happen. But if either team's going to have a blowout win, I think it's Baltimore. Because I don't think the Chiefs, even as much better and improved as they seemed yesterday on offense, I don't think they can actually blow a team out this year. But there's a chance Baltimore can just have a really easy 28-13 win type of game. And then it's very possible San Fran wins by 20 points this weekend. I don't think it's going to happen in either game, but it's possible. We've seen it before. So, I mean, think back to the Packers-Falcons NFC title game or the Packers-Niners. Like those Rodgers games, a lot of them ended up in total blowouts. And nobody saw that. So I could see that happening with Mahomes this weekend. I really can.
Well, getting blown out.
Yeah, I could see it happening this week. It's going to happen to him at some point because it happens to the best guys at some point. It always does because they're there every single year.
Yeah. I don't think it's this week, though. I think
I do. I'm going on the record. I'm saying I do. I think it is. I think the Chiefs might get killed this weekend.
Is it going to happen, though? I mean, this is a guy that's been to the AFC Championship game every single year he's been a starter.
Yeah.
So,
and he hasn't gotten blown out yet.
He's different. He's past the norm.
He is. He's Brady. He's on a Brady level of winning. And he
100%.
absolutely could find his way to 6 rings, and I would not be surprised. How old is he right now? 27?
I think he's got to win this one. He's got to win this one to do it.
Yeah, because Brady won. He had those
If
two
he wants to
phases.
get to 6 or 7.
And I'm not going to say 7 because 7's just absurd. But Mahomes should get to 5. Definitely can get to 5.
Yeah, and I
But
think we still be talking about him as the
Brady had
GOAT.
those
It'd be like the
phases.
LeBron Jordan.
Yeah, because Mahomes is going to be the stat leader for everything if he stays healthy.
Yeah.
But then he's got to play.
You know what I've
This
been meaning to do?
Conversation. I hate these conversations. Then Mahomes has to play till he's 45.
To win 7.
No, just to get the records. Brady
Yeah,
had
no, but we'll
40,
know.
Brady had 20. I mean, his first 2 or 3 years, he was average stats, but he had 20 years of being the best player in the league with one injured season.
We'll just know. Because, like, we watch right now and we say, well, we watch with Brady and Rodgers, and we were like, well, yeah, Brady's the GOAT. But if we're talking talent-wise, we know it's Rodgers. I think Mahomes has surpassed Rodgers as, well, he's the more talented guy. So I think, like, Mahomes is kind of ahead of Rodgers here. But
oh yeah,
I got to go back and watch Brady. I wanted to go back and watch Brady, like, in his prime, like, early on prime. Because, like, this, like you mentioned, there's 2 primes.
I think that watching Brady in his prime, his real, like, 2007 prime, I think that he's way better than Rodgers has ever been. Rodgers gets... All right. I'm going to turn into a Rodgers hater for a second. Rodgers gets
That's your guy. That's your quarterback.
He gets way too much praise in the all-time picture because he threw sidearm off platform. He's like the 4th or 5th best of all time for me. He is unbelievable. But he was not far better. He was best passer. Everyone's his best passer because he looks cool. Brady's the best person to ever throw the ball. And Brady made some unreal throws, man. He did not just he threw it overhand. Yeah, and he threw with fundamentals, but he threw some unreal passes. Manning too. I think Peyton's a better quarterback than Rodgers was.
I put Peyton ahead of Rodgers as well.
I mean, maybe
what's the top 4?
Rodgers has something to earn here with the Jets. He has a lot to earn. This is not just a retirement party. He's got something to earn with the Jets. If he could go out and win, then it's different.
Does he pass Peyton?
I don't know.
If he wins with the Jets, he passed Peyton.
All right, so I think the greatest talent a quarterback can have is their mind. That's the greatest ability you can have, and I think Peyton's got the greatest ever. I'm a Peyton diehard, but yeah, if he wins with the Jets, yeah, dude, that's on winning with the Jets. That might be winning with the Jets or the Browns or the Lions. So Jared Goff's got a chance to become the GOAT. All right, here's something too. Hold on. Forget the all-time quarterback conversation. I'm pretty sure, I have not actually done research on this 100%. I'm pretty sure the only 3 quarterbacks that take 2 franchises to a Super Bowl are Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and Kurt Warner. Imagine Jared Goff does that.
Say that again.
Okay. The only quarterbacks to take 2 franchises to a Super Bowl. Brady and Manning, Warner. Kurt Warner. 3 Hall of Famers.
And that's going to be
2 of the top 3 ever. And an all-time great Kurt Warner, hell of a story, maybe the greatest football story of all time. And Jared Goff, if he wins.
I don't mean to hate on Jared Goff, but oh my God.
Because now he's one of 6 quarterbacks, I believe, to take 2 teams to a championship game because you added Montana and Brett Favre.
That's impressive. You got to give him credit.
That's the storyline I'm rooting for. Is Goff to his 2nd Super Bowl, because then it's him, Manning, Brady, and Kurt Warner.
That's unreal. That's going to be like when we look at Blake Snell, right? In baseball, he's got the 2 Cy Youngs in each sport, and Snell's like sitting there like, yeah, what up? You got all these Hall of Famers, and then Blake Snell.
It's like one day you're going to have a son, and he's going to become a football fan, and when he's 13 years old, you're watching with him, and it's some other guy's doing this now, and it says on the screen, only quarterbacks that take their 2 franchises to a Super Bowl. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Kurt Warner, and your son's like, oh, I know those 3 guys.
Yeah.
And Jared Goff. Dad, who's Jared Goff? And you got to think for a second, like, who's Jared Goff? Oh yeah, he was the first pick. He was quarterback for the Lions and the Rams. He took them both to the Super Bowl. He lost both, but he took them both.
No, you know what would make this even funnier? Because he scored 3 points in the first one, right? Against the Patriots.
Yeah.
He scores 3 points again against the Ravens or gets shut out by the Ravens.
Ravens win 10-3.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Goff takes 2 franchises, no touchdowns.
It'll be like the game that they played in Baltimore where the Ravens just blew the doors off of them. My biggest win of the year in the NFL.
The Ravens killed. Does that play any role in this? The Ravens regular season games against these teams?
I'll look at that game I'll look at it very similarly. Like the spread should be 7 points. There's absolutely no way the Lions would win that game.
Because Detroit and San Fran have both been great all year. They weren't. The Ravens didn't get them when they were bad. You know, the Ravens got them when they're just as good as they are now. But who knows? You don't have to be a better team. You got to be better on that day.
I think Purdy threw up all over himself and handed them too many turnovers, and they were still able to move the ball down the field. I think if Purdy just limits the turnovers, they probably win the game. If he cut the turnovers in half, they might win that game.
Yeah, they might. All right, let's wrap up. Who's your favorite? What's your favorite and possible matchup out of these Final Four teams? And then who do you think you're going to get?
I think the whole NFL world is rooting for the Chiefs to lose with Kelsey and Mahomes and Swift or whatever. I think it's going to be the Chiefs. I want the Chiefs. I think to me, it's the defense. I think they'll, limit Jackson, and I think the offense has found it. So I think the Chiefs are going to win this game, go on the road, beat the Ravens, and I think 49ers. I think the 49ers will win by a touchdown to 10 points, kind of cover that spread, and get the job done. And I think we have a rematch of, what was that, 2019?
Yeah. 2019 rematch. I think we're going to get Ravens, Niners, the 2 1 seeds, which I actually hate as an overall storyline. But I'm not rooting against the Chiefs. I'm rooting for Harbaugh and Lamar. I really love what they do in Baltimore, especially Harbaugh. I've praised them today. I've praised them. So who do you have winning the Super Bowl?
I think it'll be San Francisco.
It'll be San Francisco? Okay. I think Baltimore is going to win it. But I'm excited, man. I like these 4 teams. I think there's a great storyline with all of them because with Mahomes, you have the GOAT storyline. I like seeing Andy Reid win. He might go out on top if they win a Super Bowl. And then I love the Detroit story, obviously, if they could win. And they're one of those teams that everyone can get behind unless you're a rival, Packers fan, Bears fan, Vikings fan.
Annoying. It's getting really annoying.
You think so?
Yeah, everyone's like, the Lions, look at the Lions, look at the Lions.
I love it. I love the storyline because I think just you root for poverty franchises, Mike.
I know I do.
As do I. We both root for poverty franchises. And I think seeing that, I think we can understand what it means. It means a lot to these fans. Imagine the Giants I don't even want to say the Giants. I'll use the Mets for you. For me,
the Mets are my poverty franchise. The Giants technically aren't a poverty franchise.
But the Jets are I root for the ultimate poverty franchise between the two of us. So imagine the Jets are on this run and they're in the conference championship, but they didn't get Aaron Rodgers. They got Ryan Tannehill this offseason. Right. And they ended up in the conference championship. But I think all the factors are cool with Detroit, unlike if the Jets or the Browns were to do it or anyone else, because I think it's cool because there's every main piece here has a background. So it's Goff was abandoned, let go by his team that drafted him. So he's kind of just a castaway. Dan Campbell was maybe the worst head coach hire of all time when it happened. And just every one of these guys has a background that's kind of similar to the city, which is just a crappy city overall. I mean, Dan Campbell kind of said it yesterday. Did you hear his post-game yesterday?
No, what
about Detroit, and he just goes, he unintentionally said Detroit sucks as a city because he says, he's like, you go, if this happens in Philadelphia or New York or something, I forget the city's name, but he's like, there's stuff to do there. Here, it's blue collar and it's, the auto industry and it's football. It's like, there's stuff to do. And, oh, no, he said Los Angeles was the city he used as an example. He goes, you go to Los Angeles, you don't think of the Rams or the Chargers. You think of the beaches and the sun and going out and celebrities, but here there's nothing to do here. there's the auto industry and there's the whatever else he said, and then he's like, there's football.
He just hates Detroit. That's what I'm getting
he's
at here.
miserable living there, but he loves the team.
Yeah, that's all that matters.
Good story. Good job, Detroit, getting there. And then I love the Ravens 49. I like the 49ers storylines. Imagine Mr. Irrelevant wins a Super Bowl, which is a kind of played out narrative at this point because he's just a good quarterback. But imagine he wins the Super Bowl and then Lamar getting his first, I think would be cool.
Yeah, we'll see. I think the Lions kind of, I'll be wrong about it, but like I think they get the Super Bowl, they get blown out by one of these teams. I think the level of play in these two conferences are, especially the quarterback play, is a lot different. And I think you need that kind of superstar coach in Shanahan to get your guy ready to go to face one of the two quarterbacks that you'll see in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I could agree with that, but maybe Ben Johnson is that guy.
He could be.
He could be that guy, which is why, this is a unique situation here, and I would not do it. I would not do it. But you can almost justify firing Dan Campbell after the season and just saying, Ben Johnson, we want you to be the head coach. I would not do it. I would not, would not ever do it. But would the Eagles have been better off this year if they did that?
Yeah, if you learn from other teams making the same mistake, possibly. I mean, you're going to see Ben Johnson go to Washington with Drake May and, become...
And good players.
Yeah, and become a really good franchise in Washington finally with new ownership and a new GM. It's not good for me. Not good for the Eagles or the Cowboys and the Giants. Maybe they should. Maybe
I think
they won't. They'll never do it. They'll never do it.
They wouldn't. And nobody does it. But I think the all-time example of it is the Mara family loved Bill Belichick. And after they won their second Super Bowl and Parcells leaves, they didn't keep Bill Belichick. And they could have, I think that they always had a little bit of regret for not elevating him to head coach because they loved him. And then you watch him win 6 Super Bowls. That's the all-time example of it. But here, it's something that I just think about often. Does that go through the head of an owner or a front office saying, because internally, you probably know there if Ben Johnson's the guy that wins you these games.
Yeah.
You probably know that there. And you know what it looks like if he's not there. I don't know, man. It's a really...
Brad Holmes is a smart enough guy to know.
He is. But yeah, the Eagles would be better off this year if they did that.
Yeah, 100%. Jenkins better.
All right. Any final thoughts, Mike?
No. Excited for the championship round and excited to be back on here next Sunday or Monday or Tuesday, whatever it is.
We'll shoot for Sunday after the games.
Yeah, it's not going to be too late.
No, it's not going to be too late. It's first game 6:30. What did last night's game end at 9:30?
Yeah.
9:40. All right.
That's not past my bedtime.
See you in the next one. Thanks for watching, commenting. Make sure to subscribe. Follow us on all the social media. BTO Media on Instagram, BTO Media on TikTok, and BTO Entertainment Media here on YouTube. But if you're here already, you found it. So thanks for watching, and we will see you next week.